it a couple of weeks ago.
Was it
And
your first time having it?
yeah, and it's kind
Yeah.
of, I didn't really cough that time when I first had it, but just kind of came back a week later and started coughing, and it's kind of sticking.
Oh no. Yeah, it's rough. Well, I have three boys who are 7 and under, and we were all sick for 2 weeks straight. It's just gross. It's just, yeah. So I also will be coughing. You can't escape it. And I founded an art academy program in our local school system. So I was like, I'm probably going to be extra sick because, you're just like more exposed to kids and their
Yeah,
grossness.
yeah. My son is in daycare, and he brings all kinds of stuff home too. I must have been sick about 8 or 10 times throughout COVID without it actually being COVID.
Yeah, like gross colds.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff.
You're like,
Gastro.
this must be what they're this must be COVID.
Yeah, yeah. I always thought I had it until I actually got it, and then I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah, this is bad.
Yeah.
Were you really tired?
Um, Luckily, I wasn't too lethargic. I had like 3 days of kind of needing to lie down all the time. And then I was semi-functional. Functional. I went away on vacation. It happened on vacation. We caught it on the flight over.
Oh no.
So that was like a real bummer. It was like we had 3 weeks there. First, my partner got it, and then a week later, I got it, and so it kind of like, we were planning on drinking. We were in Portugal. We were planning on drinking lots of wine and going to restaurants, and it was just
Yeah.
like. But at least
Oh,
at least there was warm beaches, good weather. So as soon as I was able to drive, we went out to the beaches, and I just kind of like took it easy. And at least she was sick first, so then I could take him at that time. And then when I was sick, the opposite. So
yeah.
better
Yeah,
than all being sick.
maybe you actually took a break on your vacation, right?
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah. Sort of a forced break.
Yeah,
How old is your son?
he's 3.5.
3.5. Okay, I have a 3-year-old. It's just so you have one?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's nuts, hey?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah. It's not, and we knew this, but it's not like vacation is never relaxing. This is the second time I think we go away with him because of COVID. We weren't able to do much, but right before COVID, we went away as well. And yeah, it's just you don't relax. There's no like and like time to ponder or no,
no,
you're just
never
doing shit
stops.
all the time.
Yeah, never stops.
Yeah.
You take him when you go on like do you take your family when you go on jobs or no?
No. When he was really young, I took him maybe, I think it was 2 projects, but it was in Canada. And my partner was off on maternity leave, so it was easy. But she works full time,
Mhm.
so it's not like really a possibility. So I usually just go off on my own, try to limit it to 2 weeks at a time, max 2 weeks. And yeah, I mean, sometimes it's really busy. And like this summer, I was away for most of the summer, maybe I'd say more than half of the summer, 2 weeks
Well,
at a
that's
time.
what happens in your
Yeah.
line of work, right? You can't say no. Anyway, I will introduce you. Kevin Ledo is you're an artist, you're a full-time artist, but you're also a muralist. Like, would you identify more as a muralist now, or you think both practices kind of bounce off of one another?
Yeah, they definitely bounce off of one another. I started as a fine artist. I I was trying real hard for a really long time to make a living as a fine artist, and it was really painful. But I was really stubborn.
I feel that 15 years of trying to,
Yeah,
yeah,
same. Yeah,
going,
2005
yeah.
I started, and it's at that time it was. I mean, I'm not that I'm making a lot of money now, but it was easier to just be poor and keep, chipping away at it. Um, but yeah, I would just take. I started with like house painting jobs. I would take them in the summer and then work in the winter, and then sometimes I'd take gigs here and there throughout the winter to help pay for my life of an artist. And then it kind of I just kept going, kept having shows. I was working with a gallery in Vancouver a lot, so I was always shipping my stuff out there and then getting out there, and that's expensive. So coming away with any money is always a challenge. And eventually, it actually reached a point where I kind of like burnt out and had, I worked towards a show in Vancouver, and it was a lot of work over, to for this solo show, and a
Mm,
lot of money to send out like 16 large
or-
paintings, and then the flight, and then we kind of miscalculated. It was like, I think it was on Easter weekend or something, so nobody showed up and nothing. It was a horror, but it broke me, and I kind of quit. I was
It
like, I
hurt
can't.
your heart. It
Oh, I
hurt your
mean,
creative
after
heart,
working so long, like just as an artist, but that like reaching that point where I'm not coming away with anything, it was just a loss. And I started getting really negative about art, and I was like, I need to stop for a while because I don't want to be negative about art. So it was actually during that time that I kind of discovered muralism, like murals, and my partner and I went to Central America for like 8 months, and it was during that time, kind of haphazardly, I came across it. Like I just thought maybe if I paint something at a hostel or a restaurant, we could eat for free or stay for free, and that was kind of the idea. And something just really caught when we were in Costa Rica, and I just painted for some friends of friends out there who had a restaurant, and their family loved it because the ended up staying at the like their parents' hotel, and they paid me to do two more murals, and then their cousin hired me for another two murals. So it was like I wasn't a really muralist. I mean, I painted with this group in Montreal called En Masse, and sometimes we paint walls, but sometimes it was just canvases. And so we kind of painted larger scale, but it was always a collaborative kind of thing. I never did it on my own. A little bit of graffiti in the past, but yeah, like just kind of like this ball started rolling, and it felt really good. And I kind of fell into muralism like that, and it became to this point where it's mostly the majority of the money I'm making is from murals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I still do, to answer the question in a long way, I still paint in my studio all winter long. And then when it's time, when the weather's better in the Northern Hemisphere, that's when is my mural season.
Mm-hmm. So did that take the pressure off of your practice then?
Yeah, not to say like I'm actually in that really hard phase that I hit every year. Now that all the mural season's over, I'm not traveling and nobody's expecting anything of me. I don't have any deadlines, and it's all up to me to create in my studio again. I always kind of go through this crisis of what am I doing? Why am I doing this? What should, and I really love painting in my studio, and I've always wanted to develop that side of art for myself, but it's not like wildly successful. So it's always like kind of discouraging that, especially at the beginning when I'm transitioning back to like day to day in the studio, getting motivation, and I'm like, what's it for? I have so many paintings in my, like that are stacked in my studio. I'm like, why am I doing so? I'm kind of going through that phase that I go through every year from transitioning from murals back to canvas work. But I'm kind of looking at it a little bit differently this year because it always informs my murals. I always do something that kind of always, it's like a research, uh, a research period, like an R&D kind of period, and I always end up kind of coming out with something fresh for my murals in the spring. So, and yeah, because I'm mostly making the majority of my money from murals, I just trying to just let myself play and have fun and really enjoy it rather than it's really hard to make a living just selling art when with galleries and stuff.
Yeah, I definitely I feel you so hard, and I'm sure many people listening feel that too. Like it does work for some. I know people who it works for really well. Like
Hmm.
for example, so I'm in Canada, and Andrew Salgado's from Regina, not too far from me. Like he does really well. He makes bodies of works. And so I idolized, his path for so long. Like there's a Canadian artist who is making it work. certainly I can. And so that was just not the path for me. Like it just
Yeah,
wasn't working. And it's very disheartening, and it's easy to get caught up in like the depth of the negative parts of
yeah,
it. But I love how you're turning it around now and letting it inform other things. And when you treat it as play and when you're having fun, I feel like people can feel that energy. And I only know you from Instagram, but like Instagram is a portfolio of
yeah,
past, right? It's a portfolio and a past, and I can see the your work and how it communicates into your murals, and it is so important. Like it's important that you go through these things every year, and it's important that you give yourself the time and space because you don't want to burn out again. You don't want to um you know burnout is not fun. One year I made 130 original pieces, and I was some for collections, and most of it, the majority was custom artwork. And that led me on a path of like, I can't do this anymore because the payout, I think I had made the most I ever had, but it was like $30,000, which if I was working minimum wage somewhere, I would have
right.
made that.
You're right.
So yeah, so it wasn't working. So that's when I decided to shift everything. And that did too. It didn't like for me, for your path, like murals was a big one. For me, it was very multifaceted. It was a combination of so many things. It still is. But just adding murals alone increased everything 394%. I just did like I want to guide like and that's why I really want to have you on is speaking to emerging artists who are struggling in the same way and who want to learn about mural making and how that works and some technical aspects, but because they are very physically demanding, and we'll talk about that
Oh yeah.
more. And so fun. And so I want to start to, so you did talk about how it began, and it was kind of like, it was just an organic thing that happened. Like you were there and um, like it sparked something, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, once it started, especially after having been burnt out from studio work, it was just something that was so rewarding because it was physical. It was something that I did, and then it was done. I didn't have to like try to convince a gallery to try to sell it for half the price, and then it might sell. Kind of like it was just so immediate, and once it was done, and it just felt so good to be doing something physical as well, like just listening to music, getting something done in a short amount of time, and there was kind of like a rush of like having to get it done in that amount of time, and it really changed kind of it definitely reinvigorated my art path.
mm-hmm. Okay, so can we talk about that? So standard time for murals to be installed is 10 to 14 days, right?
um I work a little bit fast, not as fast as some people I know, but my murals are generally 7 to 11.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Sometimes
Oh my gosh.
sometimes I pull things off in 5 days, and I'm really surprised. I'm just like, how did I? Okay, I'll go
Well,
with
you've
that.
done it. Like that probably didn't happen right away, right? Like that
I
happened
was always kind
over.
of quick,
Yeah.
but I always feel like my murals are somewhat simple. I don't do a lot of backgrounds. I mean, I do a lot of clean lines, and that takes a lot of time.
Mm.
But from the very beginning, I just felt like when I first started painting murals, I was heading out to Miami a lot during the art week,
Yeah.
and I was just trying to blast out as many as I could while I was there. So like the first year, I think I did five, from like the size of a small garage door to something that was like 2 stories high. I just did a number. I just was on this adrenaline kick of just trying to blast through things and get up as much as I could. And that kind of like stayed with me as I was painting murals. I used to get invited. I mean, I still get invited, but when you get invited to mural festivals, some of these festivals they give you 5 days, which is nuts, especially when you're like traveling across the world or different time zones and stuff. So you get there, you're super tired, and then from the flight, maybe you didn't sleep, and then they're like, "Here's your wall," and then the next day, or sometimes they try to get you to if you're projecting to start that night, and then you have like 4 or 5 days to like just blast something out. And so for the first few years, that's how it was. Like I would have 5 to 7 days for a mural, and so
But also to have
um,
materials and equipment available, right?
yeah, they would festivals would at least provide all of that stuff. So you kind of
Oh,
show up
really?
and yeah, you just show up and start painting. Sometimes you would have to build your scaffolding, but so I just had this like mentality, like just like don't waste any time on like, is this right or is that right? It's just like get the paint on the wall. Like, and that was what was always in my head. Like as soon as you're like, you're like, just get the paint on the wall and adjust after. So like I would really blast through things for a really long time. And I have to say though that working like that, especially in all of these like summer conditions, like in the sun, it's super hot. Um, I would be drinking, like 3 cups of coffee, and then at night, if it's a festival, especially, you have a couple of drinks with some other artists, and then back in the sun, you're dehydrated. Like, plus working the way I was working, like I reached a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I'm gonna be 44. So it's like it just reaches a point where you're like, okay, I have to think smarter.
Mhm.
I have to work smarter. Like this is not sustainable. So I just, especially for this year, like this past year, things really picked up again since COVID, and I had a lot of work back to back. And I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I have to be really smart about it because, I mean, I still did somewhat burn out, but I would usually get sick. Like I'd work so hard that I'd get sick, but at least I didn't get sick during that time. Like I didn't burn out physically to that point. But I just would try to limit, have a coffee in the morning, or at the beginning I wasn't even drinking coffee, and then I would not drink alcohol until like the end of the project, and I'd make sure I eat well, make sure I sleep well, because it's just one after another. It's like 2 weeks in one spot, and then home for 5 days, and then 2 weeks in another spot. And some of these projects were really big, so I kind of just changed how I work and try to be more make it more sustainable. And I also give myself more time now. So if anybody asks how long it takes, I say I need 2 weeks. And I might finish it before, but I need 2 weeks, especially with bad, sometimes you get rain and, different lifts don't work, or which, happens like half the time. So I always ask for more time now.
I don't know. I've never been to a festival. I have only done large scale murals in my community. In fact, yesterday we just got approved for a 2,700 square foot.
Ooh.
So I'm scared. Like I did the proposal. It's been like 2 years of working for it. It's really important for our community. It's on truth and reconciliation.
Oh,
So it's
amazing.
a pillar and a landmark. Like it's very important. And creating those partnerships are really important. So it's more about what it's about. But like, of course, as the installation artist, like the technical aspects of that and the physicality are a bit intimidating. So I actually have some technical questions. I've done a 50 by 14
Hmm.
foot one, but it was just with scaffolding and I projected. uh so what method do you use, or do you use a method when you install um your murals? Like, because you're blowing up imagery, right?
Right.
You create it digitally, small scale first.
That's right. Yeah. Now I work on my iPad, and I put the image together first.
Right. And then how like what method do you use, like a doodle grid or a traditional grid or
So I'll start from the beginning. So
yeah.
I always ask, I always need to have the image of the wall because for obvious reasons, there might be a window here or an area there that's hard to access. It's like really important to not only know what the obstructions are, but to also know the texture of the wall because it changes everything. If you're working on like cinder block, it's just going to soak up all the paint. Or if you're working on super textured brick, it's just like it's a nightmare. It's like completely different than if you're working on like a smooth painted surface. Like
Mm,
it takes like 2-3 times the amount of time.
oh, for sure.
So I start with that with the picture, and then on my iPad, I I put together the image on the picture of the wall, so I know exactly how it is and what I'm working with. And I find that super important because it's like you're putting your artwork in that environment, so you have a really good understanding of what it's interacting with.
And
And
your
so,
clients, like your clients or the
yeah,
people you're working with, the businesses you're working with, they can say, I don't like that. And then
exactly.
you're not changing like your mural halfway through, and that takes time and more materials, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. It
that's
has
like a
to
part you can't skip.
at least half the time or more that it's required that the sketch is approved. One good thing about festivals is that it's usually carte blanche, like you get to do what you want, but in return you don't really get paid well. Or some mural festivals they wouldn't pay back in when I first started. So
Like anything?
anything. So some like especially when I started out, I mean people still invite me to places that sound really cool, but there's no money involved. And it's like, well, I would like to go to that tropical island or, I've never been in Africa, like all these awesome spots, but it's like, I can't, at this point in my life, I can't do that. I can't leave my family and spend like 2 weeks not bringing back any money.
No.
Like, it just doesn't make sense.
No.
So I have to say no to a lot of those festivals, but at the start, when I first started, I was doing that a lot more. Is either, I mean, some were no money, some were like $500 to $1,500.
Out.
So, but you know, you have to weigh it out because especially when you're starting, like if you suddenly have, if you're this young artist, and you've got murals all around the world, like that, people want an artist that's painting in all these different places. Like it was like
It's your portfolio. You're developing your portfolio.
exactly developing a portfolio, my career, my name, and then yeah, and doing it for so long. I've been at it. I've been doing murals for 9 years now,
Mm.
and at this point, I just can't do that. but
No,
I,
no,
but
you're
if you're
established.
it's
You've established
yeah,
your mural practice, and people are asking for you, and you can say no. You're in a position where you can say no.
exactly. I mean, not to say that there are some projects that I work with that are very low paid, but they're so meaningful for me and for the community, and I just love working with these people. Like there's two different groups I work with. One's called Apt Arts. It's more like One Blue Sky project now, kind of changed projects, but One Blue Sky project as well as the Raw project. Um, these are it's almost like volunteering time and doing really cool things with good people that's meaningful. So at least once or twice a year I still do these types of projects that are not paid very well, but they're just, I mean, everything about it is amazing.
Was that the in Lynn, Massachusetts at the YMCA? Like that would be a good example of.
That's right. Not specific. It was with kids from the YMCA, but it wasn't at the YMCA. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was the One Blue Sky project, as well as the one I just did in Fall River, Massachusetts, this past summer. So okay, back to how I work. I Once I have everything approved, I either, so depending how large it is, if it's not very large, I kind of just sketch it out with like a marker or on a tape to the end of an extension pole. If it's larger than one story, I tend to either do a doodle grid And then when it's, I I always prefer to just do a projection because it's something that's done in like 2 or 3 hours, as to when I've done large murals with doodle grids, or and it just usually takes like a day of work. So it kind of cuts down on time. The last mural I did was, we couldn't project because we kept getting rain at night. So I was like, I have to start. So I just started with a doodle grid, and then did a projection. So whatever it takes, really.
Yeah, so you kind of combine methods whenever it's applicable. Like you just do what you can when you can.
That's right. I mean, the largest mural I did, which is like 130 feet, uh, I didn't do a projection or a doodle grid, and I just took a good photo of the wall, and I counted bricks. So that took like 5 days of sketching.
Oh yeah.
So that was kind of nightmarish.
Which
I
one
wouldn't
was
do that
that?
again. The Leonard Cohen mural.
Yeah, I was gonna say. But I mean, what a spectacular
Yeah, the result was good, but five
mural.
days of just drawing was that was, I mean, that was a crazy project. I can't work like that anymore.
Good to have it, but like, yeah, that's the hardest part. And for people who don't know, like you're really close, and sometimes you're just like, where am I? I have
Oh yeah.
no idea what part I'm in,
Oh
or
yeah.
whatever.
Or you start painting one section and you're like, wait a second, this isn't even the right spot. And then you're like, oh, this is all wrong. And then
But
in
a
those
good way to
situations,
figure it out is like to look at other artists' murals and see it close up, because you're like, oh, okay, I get it. Like something clicks in your brain. You're like, okay, so they just work on this like part by part. It's just paint and it's just applied in this way. It's not so like
yeah,
it's scary, but it's not so scary. I had that moment with your mural of Angela in Calgary. I finally got to see it in February. My friend bike toured me through, because their mural festival is so great now.
yeah.
She did, it was freezing, but we did it anyways in February. We did a bike tour of down in Calgary, and I got to like, have a fan person moment next to your big Angela mural. And because I love that one, and
Thank you.
she's so great too.
Yeah,
But yeah, it was just like, it made it less intimidating. Like it's paint on the wall.
yeah, yeah.
That's
It's hard. It's hard. You gotta like not think about it too much and just do it, because it gets overwhelming, especially on big projects. It's just like, well, you gotta start somewhere. So I know this part of the wall needs this color. I'll start with that. So you always just gotta do that. You're like, I know this part of the wall needs this color, and then once it's still kind of the same philosophies. Just get the paint on the wall and make your adjustments after.
yeah, great advice. Um, so bump, like did you ever apply, or you just started with your portfolio and you just kind of built your reputation, and
So,
then festivals started inviting you?
so that festival, I was for that festival, I was working with. I had hired someone to kind of seek out projects for me, and so
Oh,
she applied for me, and I got that project through the application.
and did you come up with the concept, or did you?
Yeah, so that concept was totally mine. They didn't even ask for anything in particular. It was originally supposed to be on a church, and the I think the priest or whoever it was really keen on having a mural, but then once he saw the imagery, he was like, oh, and came up with excuses like, even though he knows I do portraits of one person, he's like, can't we just have something more multicultural? Maybe people of all different. He just didn't want like an indigenous person on his wall, and that really fueled myself and the people at Bump to be like, you know what, we're gonna make this happen, and we're gonna make it even bigger. So they just plowed through and got this really big wall. And yeah, we were all really stoked that, I mean, if that guy wasn't that way, it wouldn't have been on an even more prominent wall. So it's sad, but there's, I paint a lot of people of different nationalities, different ethnicities, and a lot of indigenous people, but like all kinds of people. And sometimes, even people from the Middle East. And it's sad that there's still a lot of resistance. I mean, it's how it is in the world. I'm all like, let's all, one love everybody. Let's live together and in diversity, and eat each other's food and enjoy.
The best part is the food.
I know, it's like, just, you don't like this person? Have you tried their food? So, but it's so sad that there's still this resistance.
But
to a lot of
that evolved into something more powerful and important, right?
I think so, yeah.
With this, actually, not similarly, but with this project and the topic of truth and reconciliation, I actually at one point was like, I can't do truth and reconciliation alone. I like this, not like it's just I need support and partnerships and
absolutely, yeah.
That's why it took 2 years to develop the whole concept, is because I met these amazing women who are a part of it now, and it evolved into like, I can't do this alone. So it was like, oh, this really sucks. Like, we've been planning this for a year, and now it's no, because and then I found their names are Ricky and Randy, and they're sisters, and Randy's an Indigenous photographer. So and oh, here comes Teddy. Sorry. Hi. Oh. Okay, you got. Oh, he's naked. Okay, hello. You gotta go with Dad. Say hi.
Hello.
Just making it. Okay. All right. I know you do. I know you do, but you can't. He's at the stage where he loves me most. Only,
oh yeah.
Only me. Like, we need to sleep together. We need to be like, I can't even go running in the morning.
Wow.
Like,
yeah.
So that's cool. Anyway, it was at a pause, and then essentially it came down to if I don't like find the people to do this project, like it'll never happen. Like this it's not like this. We have a festival. We're in a very small place. It was, I approached them to, revitalize. It's like our downtown needs revitalization. This would be like huge for our community. So I had approached them, and they felt so strongly about that message. And then it took a lot of learning, and it took a lot of people. And I got blessed into the heart of Treaty 6 Truth and Reconciliation Committee. And they were like, we love the fact that you are an individual who wants to do something, who wants to actually do a project. We can talk about how important truth and reconciliation is and what that looks like, but this is something that we can do for our community. So it took all those things for it to evolve into the like beautiful thing it could be. And like you said, like these are so important for community. Like it can be the pillar of something. It can symbolize something that means a lot to people.
Yeah.
And, sorry. Your dad is having problems saying no. Carly. Hello. Yeah, so I'm really, really, really excited that everything moved forward and it all came together the way it's supposed to. And now I'm just like a conduit for that message and beautiful people involved. So sometimes, yeah, things don't go the way we plan
Yeah.
or the way we think they're supposed to, and we do come into roadblocks. But in the end, I think they always work out better.
Yeah. I mean, it's great that you went through all that process, and I mean, part of what you're doing and for that project and some of the projects I've done is you're kind of wanting to, you know, bring awareness to certain topics, and we need to learn ourselves as well. It's a process for ourselves just as much as it is for anybody, you know, to even consider what the subject is, who's
Mm,
outside of it. So yeah, it's definitely a process, and it's one that I've gone through myself, and you know, messed up at the beginning, but learned a little bit the hard way. And I find it very important to make sure everything is lined up properly.
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, the last thing you want to do is, well, insult a culture.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So having compassion and driven by love and compassion for all people and all culture, like that's really important to your practice.
Yeah, definitely. Particularly in my public art.
Carly, you need to come get him. Oh, he had to go to the bathroom. So
It's okay.
did you go to the park? No, I see that.
Hey, just go outside in the garage. Come on.
I can just leave his parts out of the video. That's great. Yeah, no, this is really special. And in fact, we're having the youth come and so we'll have, you know, all the proper ceremonies in place. And it did take a lot of learning and a lot of that, but also I made it so the part of the fundraising. So I am also raising the funds for this project and having $25,000 go back into the community for creative trauma programming.
Wow, that's amazing.
Sexual assault services and our Native Friendship Center and some youth centers. So, and then supporting Indigenous creatives for actually paying creatives to come to speak to students in schools for their workshops. So
Oh, amazing.
something more, right?
Yeah.
Like what could this look like on a grander scale, more than just Brandy Hofer Studios painting a mural on a wall.
Right.
It's not even me anymore. It's about something even more powerful. So
Yeah.
it's a journey. I still do have technical questions for you. When you talked about different surfaces and they do work, I've worked on textured cinder blocks, that was my very first 50-footer. And we do have a great community where they're like, yeah, sure, you've never done this, let's try it out. Like, go for it. So it was kind of crazy. But yeah, it took like so long because, you know, you're rolling out on. So what do you prefer, a roll on method or spray on, or do you like combine them all?
Well, it's kind of, sometimes I just go with whatever's available. The best thing is really just to get, I mean, it depends on the mural too. If you want to leave some of the background, you can't really spray, because it's just, if you want the texture of the wall to come through, it's too messy to spray, because you'll get overspray everywhere. Yeah, it really depends. Spray is the best option because you're not dealing with all the nooks and crannies, and you just get one of those big guns that has like a big fan of spray, and you just do the whole wall first in some kind of primer, and that way the paint just stays on top of it afterwards. Sometimes you need 2 coats. There was this wall I did in New Brunswick this spring, and it was enormous. I think it was like 200 feet long, and
Oh
luckily they were priming it for me. But it was like raw cinder block, and I
God.
think they did like 3 coats on that
Holy.
giant wall. And in some parts, it would still soak up some of the paint. So, in another situation, like I had a really textured brick also in the West Wanapee community, and there were so many windows. Like it would have taken like 2 days just to bag up all the windows and then all the plastic involved. I was just like, we're gonna roll it, and then that took super long to just, and a lot of strength. You're like pushing really long haired rollers, just pushing all day long, getting it in there, and that's not, you haven't even started painting yet. It's just so much work. So, I mean, in some situations I've painted directly on brick. If it's not too textured, I often do that, especially if I want the background to pop through. And I've spoken with some of the people at the paint shops where I buy paint from, and they say it's just whether you put a primer or 100% acrylic exterior paint, it's kind of the same thing. It can't be latex because it won't breathe. So it has to be an acrylic. But it's kind of the same effect. You don't necessarily need a primer in all situations. So sometimes I would just paint with directly on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
But the easiest is like for blending and everything is just get a layer on first and then paint.
Is there like a spray on paint that has primer in it?
Yeah, there's loads of different companies that have 2-in-1.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, in those situations, I just put the paint directly on.
So the paint are you supplied like a hardware store could order those in, or is it like a specific art spray on paint that you
No,
do?
I just use hardware paint. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
depending what the project, sometimes the project, if it's a festival, especially, they have certain sponsors. If I get to choose myself what kind of paint I use, I usually go for Benjamin Moore.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it really depends, and that's another challenge that nobody ever considers, is that some companies don't have a huge palette, or they can't even reach certain colors, and then every company's colors are so different. So like their pigments are super different. So like a Home Depot yellow now is like magically super opaque, and I have no idea how the hell they pull that off. I feel like it's a recent development, because yellow is usually super transparent. Because I was using another brand earlier this summer, and I put like yellow over a mistake like 5 times, and it was still showing through.
Oh yeah.
But for whatever, I don't know what Home Depot, what kind of magic they have up their sleeve, but they did something with their yellow, some kind of wizardry. But then then other colors and other brands, like the red is super transparent, like some.
Yeah.
So these are like all these things you really have to consider. And if you're painting monochromatic, and I'm usually painting in the reds, it's usually super transparent, and that means you can't just make a simple blend and it's over. It's like you got to go back and do it again, because it's just like, so there's a lot of things to consider. And I feel like every time I'm on a wall, I always have to, the first day or two, figure out how this is going to go down. Even though I've been doing it for 9 years, I still, like, it depends on the wall, depends on the paint, and it depends on the colors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you spray paint, or do you because you're doing portrait work, right? So, and
Right.
you're blending a lot to get that the look of the portrait. Are you rolling or spraying those parts?
I'm not spraying anymore. I haven't sprayed in a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that I won't do it again. It's fun, but I don't want to deal with wearing a mask and the chemicals, paint going in my eyes and stuff. Like, even though it's really fun, I'd rather.
It's also hot.
Sometimes it's even better.
Stuff.
Pardon me?
It gets hot too when you're
It gets hot, but then there's, I don't like the mess. I mean, it's not that messy. I guess I don't like getting paint all over my face or arm and stuff. Maybe I'm just not very good at it. But at the same time, sometimes it's really good because you don't need buckets of water, you don't need to mix. What I don't like about spray paint is how limited in colors they are, because I'm really specific with my colors.
Mhm.
And I'm often like choosing off of color, what are they called? The booklets, the color swatches, and then I'm even mixing from there. So I'm like really specific about color, and often spray paint just doesn't have the colors I want.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that monochromatic look on your portraits. I think that's really cool. And so weatherproofing, that's also something like muralists need to think about, right? Like having those, or do you just go on with like straight exterior paint and not worry about that stuff?
Yeah, I don't worry about it too much. I mean, I think if you're spray painting, one thing you need to consider is that some colors don't last in spray paint. And I don't know if there's been any recent developments or if there's some brands that last better longer now, but like reds just don't last in spray paint from my experience. And that's another reason why I'd rather have, exterior paint, like high quality exterior paint. So that paint is made to be outside, and it's made to last for, like a decade outside. It adheres really well. It has microbial, can't say that word, uh, you know, agents in it. It's protected. It has UV protectant in it. Like it's just made to be outside and to last. So unless there's going to be the risk of graffiti at the bottom, I usually don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, I've only done it once myself, but there's been a few projects where the projects ended up doing it. The producers did it, where they put on a layer of anti-graffiti on it as well, or just a section of it at the bottom. But besides that, I don't do anything. I don't seal it
Yeah,
with anything.
it takes a lot, like it adds lots of time because, well, there's actually a new product out now that you actually have to roll it on, but it's just like 1 or 2 coats tops. And it does do like it protects from weather and graffiti and all that. But the products before is you have to do 2 isolation coats
Right.
and the varnish, right? Like,
Yeah.
so
I've only
it's
ever
pretty
used
insane.
the later. I've only ever used the latter, like the Sherwin-Williams. It's made out of it's like a liquid gel kind of thing. What's it made out of? It's made out of like a, man, why can't I think of what it's made out of right now? But it's kind of like a rubbery thing. So it's like it makes the surface soft. So when you blast it with like a water with water pressure, it just comes off because it's soft. So that's how it works.
That's anti-graffiti. Yeah, it's yeah, yeah. I think I have it written down somewhere because you can go on YouTube and find processes and questions like to or answers to any of your questions, and people are so great about sharing all their knowledge. Have you found a lot of community and like that sort of mindset in the mural making business?
Yeah, definitely. Especially going to Miami every year. I feel like I go to Miami almost every year. I think I skipped 1 year because of COVID. And I kind of like, got my start doing a lot more murals, I suppose. And I learned, and what's great there from going there is that, especially back when it started, like a while, like 9 years ago, it started probably like longer than that, probably like 12 or so years ago, when people really started going from all over the world into that one neighborhood in Wynwood, which right now there's nothing left there's nothing like it used to be. Now it's just like a fancy neighborhood with some walls reserved for painting, but it's nothing like it was. So when I first started going out there was like these artists from all over the world and some of your favorite artists, and you could just bike around. I usually used to buy a bike at a pawn shop and then sell it back to them at the end. I used to just bike around, and like one next to the other, you just see like all of the world's best, muralists, and you just get to see how they work. And then I make some friends, and then sometimes paint with other artists, and you just really learn from seeing it happen in front of you. And I made quite a few friends, and we all meet up there each year, and we have a few projects going too. And so, yeah, I don't know. I just kind of really watching other people work is like the best way to advance. Like you're like, I never thought of doing it that way, or it's really something.
Yeah,
And then
it like clicks. You're like, I get it now. And that's
it,
how we learn as visual learners, right? Like
yeah,
people could write it down and I'd be like, I don't know what you're saying.
exactly. Yeah. And it's also different than it was different than like a festival, because at a festival you're usually there and you have to do your project in a set amount of time. So you don't have time to like check out other people's stuff, or not as much time. But yeah, those first few years in Miami, it was just like all happening everywhere all at once. And it
So
was just,
cool.
it was pretty amazing.
Yeah. And what a great like start. I found that like well, I minored in film, and I think I'm at the end of my degree, I was so drawn to the community aspect because I was so sick of the competitiveness of like solo painting.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like different.
Yeah, it's completely different. That's like studio versus murals too. Is like you're very isolated in your studio, and that, a lot of competitiveness comes from insecurity. So you don't have like a group of people. You're not with a crew. You're not like you don't feel confident. And so when you're not confident or you're insecure, you're kind of just competitive and you're trying to get yours, and it's not an easy thing to do in the first place. So yeah, just the culture of it isn't really I mean, it depends. There's art
I think it's
collectives and
getting
stuff.
better. I'm part of quite a few lovely communities now, and like they have shifted because we all went, like most of us went to art school, and no one liked it. Like in this community, no one liked that. I never liked it. I didn't understand why that was necessary for like in critiquing to like rip people apart. Like I'm like, what is this? What is the purpose of this? Like what are we gaining? Like it was nothing. It was because I was confident in what I was creating. The creating always for me is like the easiest part. It's fun.
Right.
And and you're right. It comes from other people's insecurities and their fears, and then they see someone who is like, I'm having a good time, and they just feel the need to somehow, I don't know, not be nice.
Right. I think
So,
there's a lot of different I find there's a lot of different uh realms in art, and a lot of different philosophies as well. And I think a lot of academic art, I mean, I really do love philosophy and thinking about things. And I find a lot of academic art is really just development of ideas and referencing things that have happened, and things that are pertinent to our culture. And I think that's why there's like a critique, is because they want you to develop an idea further, and it not just to be like a superficial or something, coming from something that just feels good. So it's kind of like I always looked at that art as like a lot of like academic art as like you make an artwork that's just like a bookmark for an idea. It's like putting a bookmark in a page of a philosophical book, and you're like, oh, and you open the page and you're like, this is what it's about. Like it's more about philosophy, or um, you know culture and history,
mhm.
and so it's a very different take on what art is. And I guess there's room for everything, because there's on the opposite end, there's vandal art. There's just everything.
Mm-hmm. And I guess you just choose where you fit, or you find where you fit.
Yeah, and it takes a while maybe to come to terms with that. I've always wanted to fit into that, and I never fit into that. which is like some weird psychological thing. I gotta always ask myself um why I even want to fit into that. But it's because I like ideas, and I feel like what I'm doing is something a little bit deeper. But I guess it's not, or maybe, you
I
know,
think
it's a
it is.
complicated world.
Yeah. I think it's deep. It's just where you're at and what you've discovered and where you found yourself, which I think is really powerful. Like when you like, time is our most precious commodity, and you've given your time and your abilities to causes.
Yeah.
And that's powerful. You're putting your bookmark in a point in history and time, and something that will be there for a very, very long time. And it means a lot to people. I think you have found yourself there, just not in the way that you thought you would.
Right. Yeah, I never thought I'd be doing what I'm doing. It's funny. And you're right. I mean, I do ultimately want to do things that are meaningful and feel good. And you know, like I feel like if we're going to sacrifice ourselves, you know, we to a certain point as an artist, it's a big sacrifice, especially if you could be doing other things that make more money. Uh, if you're not hyperly successful, it's kind of a sacrifice to be treasuring. So if we're going to do this, then it has to be something that is, you know, that you want to enjoy, that enriches your life experience, that you're using your time the way you want, your limited amount of time. If we're going to sacrifice one part of our lives, it has to at least, you know, enrich us or make us feel like we're doing something that fulfills us.
Mm-hmm. Mark Manson, The Art of Not Giving a Fuck, that book.
Oh yeah, I recently downloaded the audiobook. I have to listen to it.
Yeah, he says everything sucks some of the time. So like nothing's ever going to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
And you have to find out what you're willing to sacrifice with some suckery, I guess. And
Yeah,
if you like the payoff of the good parts counterbalance the suck, and it's your
absolutely.
choice. You do have a choice.
Yeah, everything's got a little bit of a sacrifice. Even I have some friends who are, you know, so wildly successful with their art, but they're doing the same thing over and over. And for me, that would be a big sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the same. It is. That is kind of like, well, not for everyone, but yeah, I have trouble creating the exact same, thing over and over and over again. And, because I would say I'm more of an expressionist than anything else. So, how you're feeling in the moment and time dictates what it looks like. So, yeah, when I say I wanted to be, a successful studio artist, I actually don't think that, if, you're represented by a gallery and they expect it to look like this over and over again, like with their clients, like I actually think I might hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's something that I deal with as well. And that's a bit of a struggle, and trying to place trying to understand what it is I can do and what I'm willing to do. Yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah, it is. To me, have you heard of the Milan Institute?
Nope.
Okay, so Ellie Milan founded this institute out of, I believe they started in Phoenix, but now it's like online and stuff. But her daughter, Dimitra, did this. So they were represented by galleries and two working artists, and their daughter, who was like 6, came in and like did this painting in their studio. And the galleries were like, we need this again, like over and over. Can you get her to do it again? And they couldn't, of course. But anyway, she went on to be like a painting prodigy. And like by 16, she had made like $1 million painting. These paintings represented 12 galleries. Like she was doing 1 oil a week, like, and selling it. And then of course, like, she's like, I couldn't anymore. Like I had to stop. She's on my podcast. And so she talks about what that looked like. And so then she decided to go off independently instead of having that like production line of pressure. Right, at such a young age. She's very mature, I have to say. I think she's like 21 or 22 now.
Hmm.
And so now her partner, like they have this institute, and like he does videography, or her, not her partner, her husband, partner husband, um uh they like, he does videography, and they like do reality shows in Greece. They're Greek, and it's pretty cool, and what like they've all developed together as a team, and it's kind of neat to see. But yeah, she didn't like it that way. It wasn't working, and obviously her path, I think she is successful at whatever she chooses to do, but success doesn't mean everything. Like if you're sacrificing what makes you happy, then
Yeah, yeah, we have to define. That's one thing, is like, I've done the same. I want to be successful at this, but what is, you have to define what success is. And if you're getting what you think it is you wanted, you might not be happy with what it takes to be there.
yeah, yeah. I like kind of doing it all, because then you get like surprises every now and again.
Yeah,
And
I love the diversity. I find it's very important. I also like, I make music for fun. Like,
oh,
I need a lot of outlets.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. My sister and brother are musicians, so they don't do it full time. My sister also owns a yoga studio, so we're all kind of that way. Like, we need lock me in a closet with a paper and a pad, and I'll write you like a book of poetry, right? Like, it's just like you live to create, and no matter where you are, what you're doing, you'll just
Yeah.
create somehow,
Yeah.
uh, with this drive, and it's a pretty cool gift. It's a
Yeah.
fun.
I mean, it's like, at sometimes I hated having that part of me, especially as I was coming up and, scraping the poverty line. And I was like, why am I like this? Why do I need to create? Why can't I just have a job? Like, and I would try jobs and I'd be so miserable. And I'd just be like, why do I have this? And I remember one of my friends even saying, like, man, I'm so happy I don't have this need to create. And I remember saying that and being like, at that time, I kind of felt like I was a bit cursed to have this feeling to just create. But I don't know. There's all kinds of people. We all got to fulfill whatever it is inside us that we need to fulfill. So just got to
What's
accept it
the
and make the
Yeah,
best, do what we can.
I found so I founded that art academy, and so 2 days a week, and it's a total mix. My life's just like, my new book's coming out that I wrote, because like I burnt out, so I wrote a book instead of painting for a while because I
Amazing.
couldn't. And I hope it helps people, and I'm really excited. And then I also found an art academy, so 2 afternoons a week I literally get to walk to school and home with my kids, and like help other kids find their creativity. And they made the programming so I could literally show up, and like how I felt that day, I get to teach whatever
Oh,
that
wow.
was. So I every day I call it like making space for creativity, and we do like some empowerment work, and then we get into, like, yesterday we were in the library, so we did pieces in our sketchbook with like ballpoint pen, and that was it. Their only tool was ballpoint pen, so we researched ballpoint pen artists, and then you had to find a subject and like write the research or write poetry to go along. So like literally I came up with that like an hour before I got there, and it was really fun and really cool, and they really enjoyed it. But I went to the bathroom during it, and it's a school, of course, so they had like fun quotes in the bathroom.
Right.
And I love this one, and it's exactly what you're saying. Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid.
Right.
That's Albert
That's,
Einstein. But
wow.
everyone has something,
Yeah.
just like you said. And whether our environment encourages or discourages is, and then if your environment did discourage, like where you find yourself at what point in your life, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, yeah. Life is just all about experiences and understanding ourselves. And maybe why one reason why I felt like, yeah, I was messing up my life being so poor working at this was also because of the work ethic my parents passed on to me, like being immigrants, and you work hard and you establish yourself, but I wasn't working a job, so it's like what am I doing? But once you understand, you contextualize like where their thoughts are coming from, or however you were brought up, or whatever your environment is. Pardon me?
The traditional idea of what a job is, what that looks like, and what it means.
Exactly. You just kind of, if you could understand where everything is coming from, and decide to accept it or not, or just be like, that's how, I don't want to think in that way. I want to think in a different way, or I understand why I feel this way. I don't know. I'm very introspective. One thing I like about mural painting is I don't have enough time to be introspective, and then all winter I'm super introspective.
Deadlines work for you. They motivate you to just do it. Well, Kevin, I will let you go, and I am so grateful that you took the time to sit down here with me. It's very cool to meet you.
It was really nice to chat with you.
And you are our first male.
Wow, really?
Yeah. It's mostly a female-driven podcast, which makes sense with my audience because it's like 95% female. But I think it's increasing. It's gotten down to like 85% now.
I think that's a huge honor if I'm the first male. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I was just like, and it was like the work you did in community, and I just think it's so powerful and so important. And I think that life will give, not that you expect it, but the more you give, and this works, like this idea of the more that you can give out. And if you don't have money, you can give things like compliments or time. And the more we give, you will succeed at whatever you do if you just if you keep on that path. And I love what you've given to people and community with your gift. So that's really what
that's
it
very
was.
Nice. Thank you.
And not only that, but I had so many dorky questions about technical things that I just have to know when you break down as an artist, like what other people are doing, because I live in a smaller place. So the interactions with other muralists is like few and far between. So
yeah, well, I'm always happy to share any of my experiences, and especially if it helps anybody out. I have a younger assistant that I've worked with a few times now. She asked me to be her mentor, and I was like, I don't know about mentor, but I'll bring you along on some projects. And she's younger, and if I had that when I was younger, it would have been a huge, jump in my career. So I'm really happy to share anything I know.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll chat again in the future. And hey, maybe we'll come across one another one day I'm putting it out there, at a festival. I've done lots of murals, but all commercial. So I believe in, you don't get an opportunity unless you ask for it, in my experience, most of the time. So yeah, it's surprisingly done like almost 20, but all commercial and all motivated, self-motivated. So it'll happen.
Well,
I'll get to a festival.
You may not want a festival. It's often not the best situation.
After being paid for what I do.
Exactly. Well, I hope we do cross paths, and I wish you good luck with your book launch.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, have a good weekend.
Thanks. You too. Bye-bye.